Okay, so we have two drive wheels that are attached to motors, but in order for the robot to balance, it needs a third point of contact with the ground. That's what we're building here. It's called the Tailball, and we have basically a kind of a caster that a little ball bearing will sit in that can roll in any direction. So we have to build a structure that allows us to attach that to the whole robot. So we're going to use two of these smaller L-beams and a couple of these really funny shaped pieces. I don't know why I always think of these as like a spider that's halfway climbing up a wall, but yeah, they're two of these funny shaped pieces to help us build this structure. All right, so you're going to start with the ball cup itself, and we're going to put a long blue peg through one end, and then we have this very, very short axle. It's just 3 units long, and we're going to slide that through the other end. And then we're going to connect these two L pieces, one on either side, so that they are pointing in the same direction. So there's one on one side. I'll turn it around. I'll add this one like this. Okay, so we have something that looks like that. Now we're going to add one of these L-shaped pieces on either side. So they go like this. So see which way the short end of the L beam is pointing? We want the bend in this piece to be at the same end. And otherwise it slides into the only remaining holes on the L beam, these two right here. So it looks like that. And we do the symmetrical operation on the other side. Okay. Now we're basically going to cover the top of this with pegs of one kind or another. So we're going to put 2 black pegs, one right here. This is in this funny little piece, the L-shaped pieces that we just added, and one over here. And the instructions say to use 4 of the little L-shaped pieces that have axles on one end and pegs on the other. We don't have enough of those for this particular construct. So I think this is a place where it might be safe to violate the rules and use a different color. So there are also these cream colored ones that have an axle at one end and a peg part at the other. And I'm going to use 4 of those. And we're going to just basically fill these 4 holes in the gray pieces, the light gray pieces, with those. I may be wrong that this is a good place to substitute a different peg, but I think it will be okay. These do rotate, unlike the blue ones, and that's the difference between them. All right, the next step is to take these pieces. These have 2 different axles that are they're a 3-unit long piece. They have 2 axles at the end, and 90 degrees from that they have a straight hole that goes through. And we're going to add these on top of the cream colored pegs that we just put in place. This is tricky because you have to get the pegs to line up just so in order to add the pieces. There's one. Okay, so it looks like that. Now we're going to have 2 black pegs, and we're going to add those into the holes in the middle of the black pieces that we just came out with. So we'll have 3 pegs sticking off the back of this particular unit. We're almost done. I'm going to turn it around now, and you see the black pegs that we added earlier. We're going to take a beam that's 5 long, and we're going to set it down on top of that. The very last step is to add the ball bearing. It's heavy, and it just clicks into place. And now we have a roller ball that will be attached to the back of the robot to support the weight. All right, the next step is to build a rear bumper. This is not a sensor. This is actually just a piece of framework that protects the back of the robot from when it inevitably runs into walls. So the main piece we need for the start of this back bumper is an axle that is 12 long. The easiest way to figure out one that's 12 long is I grabbed one of these white beams, which I know are 15 long, and I just pulled out an axle and lined it up, and you can tell it's 12 long. Okay, what we're going to do is to put two of these gray pieces on. They have 3 holes at the bottom and an axle that's at 90 degrees from the holes on the top. We're going to put 2 of these on, and we want the beam parts to be pointing in the same direction. So make sure that you do that when you add them in here. Now, spacing these out is a little bit of a trick, and they're hard to move once we get everything in together. So what the instructions actually recommend is that you grab another of these little 3 long beams and a couple of pegs and temporarily use them to connect the pieces together. Honestly, I would leave these in place until you're absolutely required to take them off, because I spaced them out using this method, and then I took it off, and then by the time I was actually installing the part, it wasn't working anymore. The spacing had gotten off, and I had to do a lot of wiggling to get things right. All right, so I have to push these a little closer together. This is a little bit of a place where you're eyeballing things. You don't know exactly whether you're in the middle, but this is more or less what you want. You want these 2 pieces to be exactly this distance apart. Then we're going to fix them in place with 2 of these little yellow bushings. I think it's what they're called. They basically add another layer of friction to keep the parts where you want them to be. Okay, now after this, we're going to add some other parts to it. We have these things. I was thinking these look a little bit like binoculars or something like that. It's basically the same kind of part as the other one, but it has 2 holes and then an axle on the other side. We want these to be 90 degrees off from the gray ones, but you slide one on either end, like so, and you pin them in place with 2 more of the little yellow bushings. So you have something that looks like this. The last step for this part is to add 2 of these red connector pegs in the outer holes of the black part that we just added, and on the opposite side to the gray pieces we put in earlier. So it looks like this. Okay, the next part of the rear bumper involves 2 of these angled beams. Notice that they have axles at the ends, and then they have holes in all of the other places. And we're going to put them like this. Make sure you do them the right way around. I did them the wrong way first time and had to pull out all the pegs and do it over again. So we're going to use 2 of these, and we have 2 of the little blue pegs that have axles on one end, 2 of the long blue pegs, and a bunch of black pegs as well, and then some other pieces that we'll add in. All right, so again, we want these 2 to be symmetrical with each other. And so we're going to put at the long end on the outsides, we'll put these little blue axle pegs into the axle hole. And on the other one, we'll do it on the other side. And then one up from that on the inside is a black peg. So it looks like that. And then we're going to have long blue pegs on the next hole up, but they're going to go from the inner side to the outside. And right above that, also on the inner side, is another set of black pegs. This is a lot of stuff we're putting together here. Okay, so they should look like this. All right, next we're going to take 2 more of these little connectors that change direction. So they have a hole and an axle, and they change direction. And then another of these that are similar but that are 3 long. And we're going to put the one that's 3 long on the inside with its with the axle that goes in the 90-degree direction is going to be pointing up. And we're just going to attach those to the 3 pegs that we've already created, like so. And then on the outside, we're going to put the smaller ones, and so that they're basically parallel. So we're going to attach them to the end of the long blue peg, like that. And they'll be sitting on the outside. So we still have the blue one at the bottom, but we've used all the other pegs up so far. Okay, next we need 4 more of the little pegs with axle ends on them, and we're going to put them into these 4 gray axle parts that we just added to this. I am once again violating the instructions, and I'm going to try to use one of these 4 of these cream colored ones because I think this is another place where it's not going to matter. All right, so we're going to add those. It's actually easy to rotate the part, for the little one at least, up a little so that it's easier to put the axle in. These little small parts are not good for my fingers. All right, so let's do like that, and we do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now we have those 4 little axles in place. Okay, the next step is going to be to add this piece that we already created to the 2 pieces that we have. So what we're going to do is to put this piece, which is an axle, through the axle end at the top of this angled beam. You want to make sure though that the angle's right. So you set the piece up at like this, and then we want the gray pieces to be horizontal and pointing away from the angled beam. So we just slide that on and slide the other piece on. And this is the top of the rear bumper. And then we're going to add a cross piece to give the bumper strength and some solidity. And that's the next step. So here we have a beam. This is 13 long. The instructions are not so clear here. They don't actually enumerate these parts, but it's a 13 long beam, and we need 2 long blue axles and 2 of these little 3 long beams as well. So we're going to put the blue pegs through this, and you want it to have 5 holes, so it should go in the 6th hole and the 8th hole, like so. And then we're going to add these little yellow parts on either side, just like that. It's a very simple part. The last step is adding this to what we already have, and what we're going to do is to have these pegs that we all just added a few minutes ago, and we're just going to slide this beam onto them. So it should go into the end, at either end of the beam, and also 2 down from that. Okay, this is it. This is the rear bumper.